Hey, Kevin.
How's it going?
Good. How's
Good.
so? This is like after the talk kind of thing? The
This
session?
is the after party,
Okay.
the hotel lobby. You know the.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Where's the wine, man?
Well, didn't you get the memo? You were supposed to bring your own.
Ah, damn. BYO wine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think people are just going to be kind of bouncing around between rooms. There's some different rooms going on right now. There's networking going on right now. So yeah, I figure you and I can chat a little bit, and if people wander in here, they can ask questions, and yeah, we could just sort of play it by ear.
I see that it says 2 of 9. Does that mean there's 9 people in here right now?
No, that's the amount of slots we can have on video at the same time in this session.
Oh, I see. Perfect. Two of
Yeah,
nine.
so
Okay.
so just the eyeballs are just that. So it's five people in here
Cool.
right
Yeah,
now.
I think people are jumping into the networking, probably, I'm guessing. Because yeah.
Yeah, I think people are going to jump into networking. Probably they're going to be bouncing around between a bit. So yeah, I don't know if a lot of people are going to be here and listening to us, but I like talking to you anyways. So
Awesome. Yeah, did the video play? Did it sound okay? Did the sound come through?
it was way better than our test. Way
Oh,
better
was
than our
it?
test. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it was good. Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much for doing that. I mean, it was a great presentation. Really cool to see some of the technology that you guys are working with. You and I have known each other for a little bit, but I wouldn't mind hearing again about just how you got into this whole thing to begin with. How did you get into InventDev?
well, basically, what happened is I kind of went a weird path, to be honest. I mean, part of it was looking for a condo and seeing, wow, this industry needs a lot of improvements, right? Because it was all black lines. I just couldn't believe it
Yeah,
when I was looking at that. So, I mean, that was part of it. That was many years ago. But then, really, I just love computer graphics. So I went to Mars, which is the entrepreneurship Mars kind of
I
hub there.
love Mars. Yeah,
Yeah. So I kind of went there and I was kind of meeting lots of different people. And then we just did a bunch of feedback and looking at different industries and segmentation. And I thought, hey, if I can marry like pre-construction and I also grew up building myself a lot, and I can marriage that with engineering, science, and computer graphics, that could be something that would be quite interesting. So we started with architects initially, helping architects basically pitch their ideas and so on to try to get approvals or what have you. But then when we did a big show, an architecture show, some builders actually happened to attend. They're like, hey, can you use this to market our projects? And then basically I'm like, yeah, sure. So we did the whole VR experience back in 2015, sold out the project. And then after that, it just made a lot more sense to get more on the customer experience side. So it's like working with builders, but seeing the difference it makes for new home purchasers. It's pretty amazing just to see that. So that's kind of how it happened, and then just kind of went
so and when did you found InventDev?
a long time ago, 2010. So it's been a
Yeah,
long time ago. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but we didn't start in really the pre-con so much. We started more in the technology for architects.
yeah,
More of a consulting arrangement, right? Helping them showcase their vision, explain things,
yeah,
in any capacity, try to help them win projects with builders, that sort of thing. Uh, but
yeah,
then, but then what happened is then once builders started seeing what we're doing, they're like, hey, can you actually use this to market our projects? And that's kind of, then we did a little bit of a pivot then, and then we've been pivoting ever since pretty much. And then pandemic hit and pivoting again, right? So taking everything we have and restarting over again and bringing it online. Like it was a major difference. We literally had to throw away a lot of previous work and rethink how we do things. We had to basically build everything from scratch again, but
yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, for sure. So I see we've got a question from the Russos. The Russos have been following me around the different sessions I've ended up in today. So do you think the 3D virtual selling experience would be available to higher end custom builder who only does 2 or 3 builds a year?
I think it's more, so thanks for the question, firstly. I think it's more about not so many, how many, When you say build, just to clarify, are you talking about like it's a custom home builder who only builds like 2 or 3 homes a year? I think some of the times it really depends on the situation, I would say. If a custom home builder is using tools, like 3D tools, and there are 3D tools now available for custom home builders, there may be a business case to take that and then use that information and then allow purchasers to actually walk through their home, especially if they're spending a lot of money, which obviously they would be in this sort of market. So I think it depends on the customer. If they're really struggling to understand what the custom home builder is actually going to provide for them. But it could also instead be used, instead of a per customer basis, it could be used to actually market their development. So we've actually had custom home builders who will use it for one project with a customer who really needs it. But then what they'll do is they'll take that and then they'll feature it on their main website so that will be used actually to garner and win new business. So it's not only to help the current customer and realizing helping them make all the different decisions that they need to make, but then it's also used from the builder's perspective to actually market, to say, hey, here's what we can do. But it's not a common case, to be honest, because most custom builders, after you've built a home, the purchaser will allow you to basically do a Matterport tour, which is a lot less expensive, right? So they basically build it and then they'll create a Matterport tour. So all in all, I would say it's not very common. It's just there are exceptions to the rule, though. I mean, if someone is spending $15 million on a house, spending 10 grand or whatever on a tour might be worth it, and it might even be part of the scope too. I know it's a long answer, but it's just really situation dependent. Sorry.
I know that you guys, different builders will sort of employ your services to different degrees.
No problem.
I'm wondering what is the most effective you've seen a builder sort of embrace what you guys do? Like, has somebody kind of used you from start to finish, every single value add that you can offer, or what's your experience been?
I think one of the things about new construction is that every situation, every project is different. Like, who are they targeting? What's the market? Are you marketing more to investors or end users? What's the demographic look like? Are they 65 plus? Are they younger? Is this basically an economic based solution, like a lower cost option, like production build? Or is this more of an expensive luxury product that needs to, come in like 20% more than the competitor nearby? There's a lot of things like there's that consideration to look at what we actually do in terms of the buying experience. But the other big thing is sometimes, as I alluded to in my talk, the marketing experience is controlled often by an agency. Like, we work directly with the builder, but there's an agency component to it. And there's also obviously a sales team part to it. If the sales team is really used to your kind of traditional way of selling off the plan, selling off pen and paper, kind of that kind of thing, sometimes you can have the best solution, but if it's not used, the value is not there. So I think there's multiple parts of the equation that we look at. We look at who the sales team is. Are they receptive to doing virtual showings online, right? Like, really what we want ideally is the listing team can facilitate both online virtual showings, even instant showings. We have the ability now where someone can walk in a virtual tour and it'll say agent available. They click on it and they can walk through the home instantly together. But that takes a certain kind of philosophy from the sales team's perspective. And then there's also the component of the sales center experience once the pandemic is over. What is the sales team used to doing? Are they going to be receptive to using these sorts of ways of selling? So we kind of have to look at the sales team. We have to look at the buyer. We have to look at the marketing agency, and then kind of put those things together and then come up with something that really will meet their needs. Because I mean, in an ideal world, it's about the customer and we just do everything. That would be awesome, where we have complete alignment, right? We have complete alignment from the online experience. We have complete alignment from the sales center experience, and both the sales team is well trained and ready to go, and is able to facilitate both the online virtual as well as the in-person experience. And we also have a marketing agency who's actually forward thinking. A lot of marketing agencies hold us back a little bit when they're like, we must only have a registration page. We can't give away too much. And sometimes when we get, it's better to kind of understand these things before we get into a project, because otherwise we're going at it and we both have a different idea in terms of how the strategy looks like. So these are all the considerations. It's a little complicated, but assuming we do our background research on all the players, we can come up with something that works really well for everyone.
Yeah, very cool. I know from talking to you in the past, you've mentioned to me before, one area that you guys have innovated is in generating those beautiful sort of Matterport-like 3D renderings, something that used to take days to do, if not weeks to do.
Yeah.
Now you can do in hours. Is that right?
There's certain. It can never be done hours in the sense that it's not like we are able to go in and take photos.
Yeah.
We always have to transform what we get. So often it's just 2D floor plans. We have to transform that. We get 2D cabinetry files. We have to transform that. So that process still will take several days.
Yeah.
But what used to actually take a long time is the furnishing, the decorating, the selections of hardware, and all that kind of stuff, finishes.
Yeah.
That part is much more automated now, because we have an interior design tool that we actually share with the interior designers, where they can just take a 2D plan, they can furnish it all, they can assign all the hardware, the finishes, and then we have a way of automatically taking all that information and reproducing in a 3D environment. So that actually shaves off, for a virtual model home, that takes off anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks per virtual model. So it's dramatic, the difference in time, which is good, because in the past we always had a wait list. We couldn't take on more projects. We always had this big bottleneck, and it wasn't a good experience. So we've basically created this tool for that purpose. It used to be an internal tool. Now we make it available to our clients. So
do you think like the whole sales center, that model will ever go away? Just be, go the way of the dinosaur, or do you think that and people would embrace the model that you're advocating for more, or do you think there'd always be some sort of mix or balance?
I think there's nothing can really replace the physical model home from the touch and feel perspective, right? So but there are a lot of situations where, and I'm specifically the actual physical model, they can't really build one, or it takes forever to build one, right? Like if you're looking at like mixed use projects and so on, there's just no necessarily space. There could be financial constraints to building one. So there's a lot more to it. So in the situation they can't really build a model, that's where we can add a lot of value. If they can build a model, what I'm looking at is not so much the model home. I think that still adds quite a bit of value, but it's the presentation center. They'll spend a ton of money on a massive presentation center that they'll build. And basically they're just like galleries, like showing, 2D floor plans and scale models. I think
sorry. When I asked the question, I misspoke. I was actually thinking of a presentation center when I was saying that. Yeah.
The presentation center absolutely can. I think it's more, again, on the philosophy of the builder. I mean, most of our projects don't have a sales centers. We'll use a heritage site, a church, pop-up shop, retail stores. I mean, you name it. It doesn't have to be a built sales center. It can be a smaller. We've even sold out of brokerage offices. We actually had a brokerage who actually got into new real estate development. They did a lot of resale. They just took a section of their store and they made it a pre-con, and then they just had some touchscreens and it became a digital experience, right? So there's no real reason, I would say, to have a big physical sales center. I think that could go away, could go down to more pop-up shops or weekend events, or we've even sold out in the hotels, right?
Wow.
But if the physical model home part of it, I think that's where, if I was a builder, I'd put my money into and really save a lot of money on building these presentation centers, because they're losing their value, really, right?
Yeah. So, and when you began in 2010, and I know at the time you mentioned it was a little bit of a different model, but when you began in 2010 to where we are now, do you see it? Have you seen a clear trend in that direction, or is there still resistance, or what have you experienced?
Some of the bigger builders I've spoken, like really bigger builders, are actually really questioning whether they'll ever build a presentation center again.
Wow.
So yeah. And some of them, like in Vancouver, one of the biggest ones was really like one of the main decision makers was literally laughing, saying, "Those guys over there are still building presentation centers. Haven't they got the news yet?" Like,
Wow.
so it's possible, but we live in this industry that is very traditional and very used to doing things the way they've been doing for years. So it's kind of hard to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is the pandemic's going to help kind of really shift things. But if builders did what was actually really focused on the buying experience, really on that, they would save a ton of money. They wouldn't have to spend so much on ad lead gen because they would convert better. They wouldn't spend so much on presentation centers. They wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on a variety of different things, scale models.
Yeah.
But it's more like they're just so used to it working a specific way. So they just kind of, just in case, fear of loss is greater than the fear of gain kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think the status quo is our biggest competitor for sure than anything else. The status quo, like that invisible status quo force in the fear of not doing the status quo is difficult, right? So
I like how you frame that. I mean, I think that is the biggest barrier in the real estate industry altogether. Whether it's pre-construction or with boards or councils, just the way the business operates. The status quo. It really is that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So shifting gears a little bit, I know this isn't really your business, but I do remember speaking to you, and you were looking into it a little bit. 3D printing houses. I've seen a couple news articles about that lately. Do you think that's actually going to be something that's a trend that's going to be, gaining more popularity?
I actually have a partnership in a 3D printing company right now.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually did a test print of like an off-site, so we didn't have to go through there's a lot of legislation, a lot of rules. It's a challenge because we're trying to work on like the rebar issue, using micro rebar, and we kind of got there, but it's difficult because when you print with rebar, they're little shreds of metal and they're very sharp and they're dangerous, like for workers.
Wow.
And the other big challenge is installation. So if you're using so they basically currently have an innovation which is like the foam blocks, like I think they're called what they call ICF blocks, whatever. And then they pour concrete, so you kind of get a very smooth outside edge, inside edge, insulated with concrete in the center. Yeah. So that it's basic. I think 3D printing right now, where it's being mostly used, is like up and coming new developing like countries where they need massive housing quickly and they need it cheaply. But I think it's going to be hard. There's a lot of constraints. I mean, from approvals to like what I mean by approvals. Like if we print something, how's an inspector going to come out and say this is good enough? It's so new, right? There's no rebar. Yeah. I mean, there is rebars, micro rebar, and even if it is effective, it's more like who's going to kind of sign off on something that's unproven, right? Yeah. So I think that's why like developing countries, probably that's what's kind of happening with some of these like Icon and some of these other 3D printers. It's kind of like I have a foot in it, but it's just such a big endeavor that I would have to basically move on from this company and focus on it, because I'd have to do a major raise on something like that. So I think it's getting there. But I spent a lot of time in it, and I was like, this is eating up too much of my time. So it's too many years out for me. So I decided just to kind of put a hold on it. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes. But yeah, like behind the scenes, I was spending a lot of time on the 3D printing, but it was just taking too much time.
Yeah. So like big time scale, like let's say 100 years from now, would this be the way all homes are constructed, or what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, it's tough. Like the real tough part is the installation. Well, there's a few things. The installation is really, really hard because concrete's it's got a terrible R value on it. Yeah. And the other reason is that you can't modify the house. Like it's literally concrete, right? A concrete shell. So you can't just like, oh, you know what, I'm going to change my this or that. Like so you basically still need the stick and brick interior part of it, right? Like you're not going to, you could print the entire house, but you literally can't touch a wall after that, or even adding a receptacle is a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really cool for like shelves of homes, but it's just being in it. It's just, I spent so many hours trying to figure out the installation issue, and also like how it's like, well, it's faster for sure to print, but if anything goes wrong or concrete dries up, because it's very fast setting concrete, right? And it constantly, the nozzles always clog up and stuff like that. Yeah. Or for some reason, like they don't get the insulation in on time. Like there's just, or they cut themselves because the rebar sticks out. It's like knives. It's sharp as heck. So there's a lot of challenges, man. Like it's hard. It sounds really cool, but God, it's overwhelming, the challenges that we ran into. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna need like I'm gonna do a serious raise. So Icon did a raise, and they raised with one of the bigger national home builders in the U.S. Yeah. Right. They did, I think, I can't remember what it is, like a 15 mil or something raise. It was a decent amount. And then they went, and now they're doing printing mostly, though, but not in the U.S. because they couldn't get any. They had such a rough time with approvals, right? So they went. So it's just, I think it's really cool. I just think it's really, really early, right? So.
But in 100 years, will we all be 3D printing our houses?
100 years. You know what? I think if I was to guess properly, I think it would be a blend. You know what I mean? Like a blend of modular and printing. So you could have like a modular floor built, and then you just print, and then you drop the modular base floor on top, kind of thing, maybe. Because you can't print like the floors, right? Yeah. So I just think I don't think it's gonna be 100%. I think it's probably like the shell of the home will be printed. And then you'll combine that with existing construction techniques to get to the home. But 3D printing the entire thing, I can't see that being possible right now because you have the floors, right? Yeah. So, which is another thing. Like, how do we mount a floor to a 3D printed concrete wall? Yeah. Right? It's different. It's a different approach, right? So that's another challenge you ran into. So we started with just single family homes, right? Looking at that. I mean, I had a whole home designed for 3D printing. You actually walk around it online to kind of get a sense of. It was nice too. It's pretty cool. But we'll see. But one thing at a time. Like with the new construction industry, I'm hoping that like the same way like Zolo has like mastered the art of the resale and lead gen and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think the only way to really make a difference is to try to enter that market. It's just something I want to work towards. You know what I mean? Yeah. Offering that so that we don't rely on the agencies and we don't rely on the builder to offer the best buying experience anymore. Yeah. Yeah. We can now automate so much that we can actually create the virtual mall experience online, and we don't necessarily need the agency or the builder. It becomes so financially easy to do it. And so that's part of the reason we're automating so much is like, imagine if you could just go online, Google Map, walk around every site plan, walk around every home, pre-con, purchase, select the item you want online, and then either buy digitally or not. And we're actually speaking to some payment processing kind of providers too, who already kind of solve the they have the compliance, FinTrack compliance and everything. So that we can do the photo ID validation online and do all that kind of stuff. So that I'm hoping, in the coming years we can get to. Yeah. Otherwise it's difficult, right? So that's kind of what we'll get to.
I mean, the Russos make a good point that in 100 years we're all going to be on Mars with Elon. So
no kidding. Can you three? Yes. Okay, that's an interesting question. So can you 3D print a house in the slab on grade? So what we did with our 3D printer is we actually went to like a farmhouse because we could avoid those rules like this remote farmhouse and call it a chicken coop. Yeah. And what we did is we did a slab on grade, and then we actually printed the walls on that. And then, but that was more of a small scale test. So it wasn't like a full, 100 years will be on. Yeah, exactly. And then you could potentially put a roof on top, but we're still trying to work through other details before we got to the roof, to be honest. Like that's something we could add, but we're trying to figure out like insulation. It's in Canada. It was in Vancouver, actually, Vancouver North. So how can we get the R values up? It was more, basically it was a test ground, an experiment ground where we were just printing walls, trying different things. We didn't get to the roof. So that's kind of where that went with that.
What software are we using for VR?
So the way we use it's a little different. So the same way that Matterport has their own kind of proprietary way of doing VR, we have our own kind of internal ways of doing it. So basically what we have is it's actually Google authorized us as a provider. You can basically have a 2D floor plan, you decorate the whole thing, and then we generate basically a 3D component of that, and then we render the whole thing out. So by rendering, I mean obviously it doesn't exist, so we can't just take pictures like Matterport. We can't use the Matterport camera. So we kind of we have a 3D camera, but a virtual one. So we create all those imagery, and then we take all that, and then we can put that in any tour software, whether it's KR Panel or Panel 2 VR or 3D Vista, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Once we create that virtual tour, we can then put that into any virtual tour software. Matterport has their own, but Matterport obviously is not the only one out there. I mean, technically you could take the Matterport panel images and put them in another software if you don't like Matterport. So that's kind of what we do, is we focus more on the generation, and then we can support any, like if you just do Google of virtual tour software, we can support any of them.
Very cool. So you've played around in 3D printing. I remember you were getting involved a little bit in the blockchain as well. Did you end up doing anything with that?
So with blockchain, I was more interested in basically how the home purchase can be done using essentially a blockchain. So blockchain essentially it's really hard. It's really, really good. I mean, it has a bad name around it, but the reason it has a bad name, I think, around blockchain is because when you own Bitcoin, no one else can take that from you, but you can also hide your ID, right? You're basically an alphanumeric digit.
Yeah.
So it's very good for basically ensuring that no one can steal your money, essentially. Like that money is yours. And then when you do a transfer to someone else, it still takes a little bit of time because basically there's a whole technical part to it that keeps it secure. So it might take up to a minute, but it's still far faster than like a bank wire, right? Which can take over a day, right? Or 2 days, depending on how many routes it has to take.
Yeah.
So I was more looking at if someone owns Bitcoin and they actually want to use that to actually purchase homes, and they want to kind of avoid the whole long process of that, and the transactions can happen very quickly and securely. What does that look like, right? And that has been used, right? And I believe, not here in Canada or the U.S., but overseas, Bitcoin has been used to put down deposits on condos and so on, right? So it was more of that as an interest.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Bitcoin got a bad brand reputation around it. It was seen as being used by money laundering and hacking and all that kind of stuff. So
until you have Tesla putting $1 billion into it, was it?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly the number, but
it was something like that. Yeah. They ended up putting $1 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. Just wild.
Yeah. It is crazy, and apparently there's a funny video about someone basically trying to really old days bring a clump of gold and trying to say, hey, I just want to buy a chicken with a clump of gold, and they're like, that's just like a shiny thing, why do I want that?
Yeah,
right. And same, they're trying to show Bitcoin's the next version of the gold, right? So it'll be interesting to see, but it could take off in real estate. It started to. There's a lot of news about it, but I mean, maybe it's not. I'm just not following up on it, but.
Yeah,
I think it's an opportunity. But first, I think we just need to focus on doing regular transactions, using purchasing online and doing that in a secure and safe way, using our existing ways of transferring money. Because the other challenge is you need a digital wallet for Bitcoin, and people don't even know what that is, right? Or how to set one up.
Yeah.
So there's a learning curve for that, and whenever there's a learning curve, you know how it is, right? The adoption is difficult. So I just think right now Bitcoin is more for those who are enthusiasts about it, but I couldn't see it being used for the average end consumer right at this point, right? So we'll see. Yeah.
So with Invent Dev, do you guys have any exciting projects coming up, or anything that you're working on currently?
Yeah, actually. So I mean, right now we have several projects. Most of them are in the U.S. actually. So we just launched a 3 condo project in Florida, targeting 65 plus. So it's been really interesting to do everything virtually and selling to 65 plus. And
how is that?
It's been amazing to see that the self-serve component is actually working really well. I think that we underestimate people in that age demographic. They're, especially with the pandemic, WhatsApping their grandchildren every 5 minutes, like, you know what I mean? So I just think that they're pretty savvy these days, right? People are looking to buy in Florida. So we've actually seen really, really good online traction on self-serve for a new condo project in Florida. We have another one coming up in Arizona. Townhome project there, selling online. We did the Huntsville one. So we have a few different projects, but we're actually spending a lot more time trying to work much more closely with the listing side of things, right? It's so important. Like really what we're there to do is try to help the listing team to be successful. And as you know, it's much easier to go in with a company like Zolo, who is really, understands the need from the purchaser perspective, understands the buying cycle and how things are evolving, right? So we would prefer to kind of work together, and that's what we're doing. So with Arizona, we're actually working together with a brokerage. We went in together to win that assignment. And then the one in the again in Florida, same idea. We're working very closely with that sales team. The builder actually brought the sales team in, but we are actually trying to do everything we can to support them. So really, at the end of the day, we're there to both try to provide the best buying experience, but we're not the ones directly speaking to the customer. So our role is to really understand what the listing team really needs to be successful, and just go with that, right? Whether it's of selling to investors or selling to direct inside sales, whatever. Basically, we just kind of try to align with them and try to support them the best way we can.
Yeah.
What's that for you? I foresee VR tours and virtual. I foresee VR tours and virtual sales.
I think not happening much sooner, using VR goggles and other tools like VR medical clinics, etc. Not sure it has already started.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you may be referring to I think on CBC, and so when they're talking about some innovative doctors using this as a way of actually training people using medical devices and doing like mock surgeries using VR, and it's a much more safe and effective way. And with a pandemic, it's obviously is safer. So I think with medical clinics, the need is there, but I think when it comes to VR, obviously sharing headsets is not ideal in a pandemic. So that the VR experience, it's actually unfortunate. We had a whole VR experience ready to go for that Huntsville project that I showed, but then the sales center shut down. So obviously, but that being said, there are VR headsets that are like $5 cardboard where you can just put the VR in your phone, right? So every experience that we have, you can go into VR mode and put it in a headset. So the challenge though is that most people don't have a VR headset sitting at home, unless you have a kid who's basically into gaming, right? So it's not so much the technology is all there. I mean, every tour, like I said, has VR capability. You just basically go on your phone, tap VR, and put in a headset. Or if you have an Oculus Go, like I have an Oculus Go right here, unopened. All you have to do is like go to the tour online, and then you can actually walk through it. But most customers don't have that at home, right? So it's just the adoption's not there yet. But once it is, like once VR is a common device, and there's no reason, it'd be like, in fact, why not walk with the customer online together? Like we can walk customers through virtual tours. Like the agent can just take control over them, or the purchaser can take control over the tour and then walk around together, right? Just like you would in the real world. That already is possible, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we've seen how technology has evolved, right? And there was a time where I remember when I was a kid and my family bought our first 286 computer, and it cost $5,000
no kidding.
for something that, like, a basic calculator nowadays has more processing power. So, you go from that to dot matrices to, desktop 3D printers are now starting to become something a little bit more mainstream. There's still a little bit more on the techie side that you kind of need to know how to use CAD a little bit and all of this. But I have no doubt that in a few years, dummies like me who doesn't have CAD knowledge will be able to just 3D print whatever I need in a moment's notice. And to 286, 2 to 4 megas.
Yeah. Well, you guys are ahead of me. Who had the Commodore 64? It's like, you remember the commands like start, comma 8, comma 1?
Yeah.
Start, comma 8, comma 1. That's how you literally started the damn thing. And then all I played was that this little game where you just, is the most basic of games.
Yeah.
I'll press play on tape. Okay, you're beating me there. Yeah, I like to insert those cards, right, to play a game.
Yeah, that's right. I remember, that this was how I started to learn about computers, was having this 286 computer and really wanting to play this game on it, but my computer didn't have enough memory. But if you did some things if you remember the autoexec.bat and the config.sys, if you buggered around in there, you could loosen things up and get memory back. That was actually really how I first learned about computers. Scorch, no, the name of the game was called Blood Money. I still remember that game. It was this cheesy little, very, very weak graphic thing, but it seemed like incredible to me.
Wow. I actually remember mine was a little Bruce Lee game. That's what it was, Commodore 64.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that this industry in general is just really it isn't very receptive to new technology. There's a lot of them online. You can appreciate with builders when they're selling a project that's like 20 million or up to $100 million, and they're looking at it, how like, you know what? Like, I've been building presentation centers. They cost, over $1 million, but they've worked in the past. So I understand logically why I don't need them. I can get away with a much smaller digital presence. We can do more. But what if? Like, what happens if it doesn't work? There's a lot of money in the line. So they're like, you know what? Gut feel, emotion. I'm worried. I'm going to go with you know what I mean? It's not a you can try to rationalize it logically all day long, but there's that emotional fear of losing or loss and then that regret, right? And I think that's what we're up against, right? At the end of the day. And so long as builders dump more and more money into these presentation centers, they don't have any budget remaining for anything really innovative, right? So that's kind of the challenge is like, look, you can save $1 million on your presentation center, spend another 50 grand and create the best buying experience possible online. But then still, you could, it's that emotion of, but I've been selling using presentation centers. So with the pandemic shutting them down, literally forcing them to shut them down, I think all of a sudden they've realized that, hey, maybe we don't actually need to build them anymore. So I really think without the pandemic, I think nothing would be, I don't know if anything would ever change, to be honest.
So do you see this as a sea change? Like, do you think that this has accelerated 5 years, fast forwarded you 5 years to where you would normally be, or what do you think?
I mean, being in the industry so long and seeing just how little progress that's happened, and then having the pandemic happen and overnight seeing that, we gotta not only not restrict information, we gotta put everything online, and we gotta put the entire experience online, and we need to do that now.
Yeah.
That sense of urgency would have taken potentially decades to have. Like, it just would have been a very slow progression.
Yeah.
But just like anything, like this forced builders to have to change. I mean, the question is when the pandemic is over and these vaccines are here, hopefully sooner than later, what will happen? And that's what I'm more interested about. Are they going to go resort back to the old ways? I just hope not. I just hope that builders realize that the pandemic actually forced them to offer a much better online experience that's more in line with what people expect.
Yeah.
I think with resale, resale is more ahead because resale's been using Matterport tours. Even them, it took a long time. Like when they launched in base back in New York, remember that when they got their VC round and the founders we're on stage talking about Matterport.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, obviously, you're going to create these virtual experiences and put them online. Like, it's just much better. It's going to save driving around from site to site. It's going to allow them to kind of narrow down what they want so that the buying agent can then focus on those actual properties that they're interested in.
Yeah.
But look how long it took. Like, it took years, right? Like, to adapt Matterport. And some people are still questioning the whether they should use that or not. So I think the pre-construction industry is just, we're still early. Like, we're still in it's better to use virtual tours than block lines. We're still there. We're still far behind, I think, resale. There's still that convincing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, and it actually goes back to your original point about, and I love how you had phrased it before, that your biggest challenge in this industry is fighting the status quo, right?
Absolutely.
And for as crappy as the pandemic has been, at least maybe it's kind of knocking some people out of that quo and being able to see what the potential actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still see though what a lot of builders have done. Yeah, is they're not doing like a version 2.0. All they're doing is taking that's technical, but what I'm basically saying is what they've done is, a lot of builders is they call it their virtual sales office or sales center. But literally all they've done is they put it online. Like, they create a website, they put their floor plans online, and then they have the salesperson do the same thing, but online. So that's an incremental. I can understand that with the pandemic. Builders don't have time to really kind of think about new ways of selling. But a lot of sales centers are literally taking the floor plans and putting the PDFs online and adding the agreement purchase sale online. And then that's it. And they still rely on the salesperson to try to explain what the home looks like, but that adds a lot of buyer friction, right? Like, it's easier just to let them see it, let them see the entire home, what it looks like, the finishes, the features, and everything. Yeah. And so that's what's happened. But some builders have then taken the additional step of now putting their actual virtual versions of the homes, or taking their physical models and putting Matterports online. Some have taken that bigger leap online. Yeah. So I still think there's a lot of work to be done on the online experience. We're still really early. It's, you know what I mean? So there's a question about AR. So augmented reality, for those who are not familiar, is basically using, it could be a screen. There's new glasses coming out too. Microsoft announced one recently, where you basically look at an existing space and you can overlay information. So AR in our case doesn't really apply as much because we're dealing with non-existent spaces. So it's kind of like an AR-like experience when you hold up an iPad and kind of look around a window and kind of see what the home could look like. But it's not really AR, because true AR is basically seeing the real world and adding information on top of it through a screen, whether it's an iPad or a goggle. So I think where AR could apply, though, is in resale. Obviously, it could be like having an empty home and using like an iPad to see what the home could look like furnished. So like basically virtually staging using an iPad. And the same applies to inventory homes. Most models are furnished, but if you have a bunch of inventory homes and you want to allow the customer to see what they look like, you'd always have like an AR experience. You hold up an iPad, you can kind of walk through it, see what it looks like virtually staged. So I think AR can apply in both cases. It's usually for built spaces that are empty and you want to show what they look like staged. That's not as common in pre-con because not many builders have a lot of inventory homes. Some do, but in resale, vacant properties, no unfurnished properties, it could be pretty big deal. Use it and remove holders, junk inside house. Yeah, the challenge of using AR to remove stuff, it's technically challenging just because basically what you're doing is you're overlaying new information, but it's hard to remove information, right? So the only way to remove information is if you can try to overlay like a new sofa on top of like that old sofa and try to overlay it. You can potentially do that, but to entirely remove information, normally that requires computer graphics to basically regenerate that space, clear it out, and then overlay. So, and that's what you're meaning, Lex, in terms of removing junk, creating like a new fresh copy of that in computer graphics and then overlaying it. But once you start getting that, you might as well just create a new clean version, virtually stage the whole thing, and then just show the whole thing in the window that way.
Yeah, just
yeah. It would be really cool. But.
I remember when I was actually walking into a home in 2008 with the owner of the home. She was an elderly lady, and she had not been there. She had rented this home for the past 15, 20 years, and she had not been there all that time, and now she was getting ready to sell it. So I accompanied her there. We opened the door. We walked in. It was insane. It literally, it probably had never been cleaned in 15 to 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
You had stuff, literally, it wasn't piled to the ceiling, but it was piled higher than my height, and just layers and layers and layers of dust. It's so yeah, that would be one of those, once you develop the AR removal technology, the hoarder removal technology, that's where we got to apply it.
There is actually a scenario, but it's kind of, if you think in advance of removing, there are situations. So what I mean by that is we have actually a project we're doing, which is for leasing. So basically what we're doing is, a big common problem is that, when you're renting out units and then people leave it and it's in a really bad shape, and then it's really hard to lease that out. It might require a lot of work. But what if we could virtually stage the entire building so that the minute it's available, we can actually put it online and show a whole really nicely virtually staged version of that?
Yeah, cool.
So that's actually what we're actually doing, right? So that way they can use it for forever, and every unit looks amazing. So regardless if it's actually, needs a lot of work, you can actually essentially pre-lease it and get it, sign-ups in advance. You just got to make sure you clean it up before they actually see it, right?
Yeah.
But so that's what we're actually doing as well. But again, that's more of a situation where you go in and before it's actually built. You could do that for, again, if there's a building and you have enough units, you could do it for an existing building too. Yeah. I mean, if we got access to the plans, we could take those plans, virtually stage the whole thing and put it online in a similar way. And then forever after that, every unit could be easily pre-leased online for existing buildings too. It just, you have to still do that work effort of essentially initially creating those virtual homes, which is essentially what we're focusing on automating as much as possible. Yeah. I mean, we're doing everything we can to automate recreation of spaces. It's just a challenging problem, especially with regenerating 3D plans from floor plans using computer vision. Yeah, we've been looking at that, but it's hard. I won't get into the technical part of that, but that's like looking at having computers inspect a 2D floor plan and then try to reconstruct a 3D plan and try to identify what's a window, what's a door. We've been actually looking into that, but the success rate is not high enough. It's just cleaner, just faster for us to create it from scratch. Yeah. But that would be amazing, because if we could, we would just reconstruct every floor plan that we could, put it online, we'd be done. And then you can do the AR stuff if you want to, or VR, whatever you want to do. But fortunately, it's a dream right now for us.
Dave, I think I've said this to you before, but I always love chatting with you. You're on the bleeding edge of the real estate and technology scene, and it's always we're in generally we're in a pretty stagnant industry, and again, as I've already mentioned a couple times, the whole thing of fighting the status quo, it resonates with me. So I always love to see the stuff that you're working on. So thank you very much for your presentation today. That was awesome, and then for talking to us afterwards. That was great as well. And we're still going here. There's still 82 people in the conference, which is really good. So you can click on the networking button, and of course, Dave, you're welcome to. I'm sure our realtors would love to talk to you one-on-one. You'll be matched with somebody over networking, and same thing on the session side. I think there's a couple more sessions going on as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna post my LinkedIn right there. That'd be awesome. Yeah, just click on that. I would say if you want to reach out, thanks for your question, guys. I mean, it's unfortunate we can't hear you guys either. It's just us and me and Kevin talking here. But yeah, please do click on the LinkedIn. It would be amazing. Like I really think one thing that I've always thought is in the pre-construction industry, the voice of the actual salesperson is not, unfortunately, loud enough. I mean, the reality is if the builders put more weight on the decision and the voice of the actual salesperson, that would actually change the industry for much for the better. Because as long as the voice of the salespeople is not really heard, then we're going to be still doing the same stuff, the same old way of doing things. I think that the best advocates, I would say, is the salesperson. They work with customers. They understand their needs. They're the ones I just wish their voice would be heard louder within the pre-construction industry. I can only do so much. I can ask and advocate, but really it's the salesperson really who really should hold the cards, in my opinion. And I think that would be a major difference, and that's what we need to do. We need to do as much as we can to partner with people who love pre-construction, agents who love pre-construction, and ensure that their voices are actually resonate all the way up to the top. That's what we need to do. Then everything will take care of itself. All the things we've been talking about, Kevin, about the needs, those needs will become evident, and then builders will be willing to take a risk because the sales team is saying, look, you can save your money over here, but let's focus on the customer, create that ideal customer experience.
Yeah.
That should, so I'm hoping that happens more. It's just often we see that a builder will bring in a third party listing team, and sometimes those teams have a different philosophy on things, right? They want to do the status quo too, because they don't want to stick out their neck at all or upset anyone. But I think this entire industry is ripe for disruption. I really do think, and there's a lot of opportunities. And that's a good thing about being in this industry. Like, let's face it, if everything was already done, we wouldn't really need to have this conversation, would we?
Exactly.
So hopefully I'm just hoping we can get there before, we end up being moved into Mars or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot of time to go before that 100-year Mars timeline. So I think we can accomplish some things, Dave.
Hopefully. I mean, it would be, I would think that getting to Mars would be a bigger hurdle than just simply creating a better buying experience. I hope, but I've been at it for a long time, and there's still a lot of work to be done. I feel like I haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg, right? So we need literally a sales force of people to kind of change the entire industry. And hopefully we can do that with Zolo, right? Let's do that.
Exactly. Zolo and InventDev.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take on this industry and let's disrupt it in some way or other. The same way Uber did with the taxis. You know what I mean?
You bet.
Anyways, awesome.
Okay, Dave. Thank you again. Thank you everybody who's joined us here. And feel free to click over to any of the other sessions or the networking. And we still got over 78 people in here, so can still have some fun.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.